Before I start talking, just so I can be germane, I just walked in, so what are we talking about? Like, what are we doing right now? Approving this, okay. So, I guess, I really do want to express that, several members of the committee came up to me saying that this was not shown to the committee, this was not, in any way, like, even given a heads up about what's going to happen. And if you look at 2B, essentially, it puts all funding for controlling funding for media orgs with the VP of finances, and I really don't think it's fair for us to consider this as something the committee came to a conclusion to, because it's not. And we're going into new business to consider this when the committee convened and looked at things together and had A, B, and C, not this. And this was kind of pulled from behind and this is new business, and suddenly people want to vote on it. And I think this is, to be completely honest with you, entirely shady. Really shady. This isn't the way democracy works. This isn't the way we're supposed to run AF. This is embarrassing. Okay? And additionally, to all of this, like, what other committee members have told me also is that, and I want to make sure this is germane, I'm trying my best, but a lot of people didn't, a lot of people on the committee agreed to not have a presentation. Okay, to not have a PowerPoint presentation, other than Chris Cruz's. And all of a sudden we have VP of Finance presenting a presentation that took up half of the time that the committee was allotted for to speak about what they concluded, what they came to.
This really isn't germane. You need to bring it back to this topic.
So I'm bringing it back to this. We shouldn't be really even looking at this right now. Okay? Yeah, we voted on it in new business, but it was presented as something that the committee agreed on. And in fact, they didn't. This isn't what they recommended. This isn't what they talked about. In fact, they didn't even know this was happening. So I urge all council members to really reconsider what's going on here, because this is, to me, really alarming and really upsetting.
Arden?
So I just want to take, I feel like what I'm hearing is the fact that a lot of people are bothered by the fact that all this power is concentrated in one person. So what about creating some sort of board? I don't want to call it a review board. Just putting it out there. So I want to just toss that idea out there. We kind of like some of what's in this proposal. I don't like the fact that that power is concentrated in one person, but I'd be open to considering the idea of something like SOFAB for our media orgs. And I'd like to take that to the trouble. So one, you'll like this legislation with all this power in the VP Finance. Two, you'd like to see some sort of board around it, more people, spread that power out. Three, you don't like this whatsoever. Four, you're undecided. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Rocky Dog.
Okay, so I don't think we should talk about why this is a bad idea to give Peter or the VP Finance's position too much power. I think we should talk about why this is bad legislation. It's sketchy as hell how this was pulled out last minute, and we did agree that there were going to be no PowerPoints. Nobody brought that up. I mean, this has just been a lot of backstabbing throughout this whole thing, and I'm really sick of it. I'm really sick of it. Like everybody else, honestly, we've been pretty up. No, we're not. Why we should not? We're debating why we should not choose this model, right? It's a bad model. AS already handles its funds poorly enough. You don't give future AS, whatever it is, maybe it's the perfect AS, which we had yet to see, don't give it more power to control how it funds media. Right now, you can just start an anti-AS newspaper about, and just chalk up the flaws of, every single council meeting. That would be great. People would actually be able to see it. Why would you ever choose to fund that? That makes no sense. This entire document is so absurd. And let me also say something else, which is pertinent. Many letters from the ACLU have been given to the president on this topic. So saying that this is pertinent is because this will likely be declared illegal anyway. I'm not going to make the point that, oh, we should worry about legal fees that are being incurred, but it's just fucking stupid. I actually can personally check the most recent article. Yeah, sorry. I'm allowed to swear as long as not directed at somebody. So, we check the most recent operating rules. You guys using the outdated 1915 version or Germain that we use? Okay. So anyway, it's just a bad piece of legislation through and throughout. You guys knew about the fundamentals for weeks. This should have been submitted into the order of business. I still do not understand why it wasn't. God, I can't even, you've heard the arguments against it. Why give the AS more power? Why make funding of media discretionary? Don't. Go against this. This is BS.
Adam, ready?
Okay, I have a few points to raise. So, I mean, I'm not sure where I stand in terms of voting, but I do want to raise a few points because I want to fight this until I'm forced to concede. In terms of discretionary funding, we have discretion, but we have it with criteria. And yes, it may be unofficial criteria, and yes, it may be a bunch of screwy math, but it holds us accountable. And recently there's been a push to put it into writing, which I'm totally in favor of, because it holds future members of council accountable. I don't know if it's ever been true. I don't know if it's always been the case that we don't fund food, but I know that student organizations are opposed to that. But let's imagine for a second that there was a time when we did fund food. And then we turned around and we said that we're not going to do that anymore. Obviously, there would have been an outcry. There would have been a public outcry. You would have seen this. You would have seen student organizations showing up to say, no, we don't want to make this change. We want you to fund food. We want to keep it the way it is. 10 years down the line, right now, what we're looking at, we don't fund food with such, like, it's not even considered. Because it's become such a part of our MO, just to not fund food. And that's not necessarily like, I mean, people are just complacent with it because it's been in our standing rules. So, I mean, when you think about this 10 years down the line, is it so much what we're basing it on right now? Or are people going to adopt, like, you know, some argument of fiscal responsibility, that if people aren't reading this or it's not a benefit, are we able to consider that if it's not some benefit because there's no readership? I'm going to throw out the argument that some bizarro council is going to come along that just like completely flips this thing on its head and says, we should fund it, the koala and nothing else. But I mean, I think that, I don't know, I just want to raise the concern that things are going to change. We need to think about making this sustainable. We need to think about making this like something that's always going to apply with the ideals that we're putting forward. And I'm going to make an amendment for item D, section D, item 2, I don't know. To amend the Vice President of Finance to any member of council, and then to amend will be responsible, may exercise the right. And then also item 3, item 3, amend.
Can I ask that you split the question?
Second, yeah.
Okay. Make an additional amendment in item 3 under section B to amend Vice President of Finance and Resources and the President to the AS Council, or majority vote of the AS Council.